Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're live at BeyondX. It looks like we have a lot of people tuned in, mostly from Asia. But today our speakers are outside of Singapore. I'm Robert Brodeth, Associate Director for an architecture studio here at ONG&ONG, here in Singapore.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm the Beam Guru, hailing from the peaks of Himalayas. Welcome to Mortal Kombat. Sorry, I mean BeyondX. So BeyondX is an annual design festival showcasing fresh technologies and speakers to inspire creativity and innovation, where we invite the most prestigious speakers in their field to share knowledge and developments with the world. Welcome to our session, Leaps in Computational Urban Design. So, our first speaker is Robert Curry from Australia. Listed by Standard Australia as one of the country's top entrepreneurs, Robert is also a best-selling author and co-founder to Archistar. So the company's world's first artificial intelligence helps the property market to find profitable development sites and generate dozens of architectural design strategies, all within a matter of minutes. So the last I've heard, Wall Street Journal has valued their company in billions, rivaling Facebook. So back to you, Robert.
And our second speaker is Johan Hanegraaff, Vice President of Archeo from Iceland. Right, okay. 10 years of experience in architecture field implementing and developing design tools for computational projects. Johan is VP for product of Archeo, a collaborative design tool for architecture. It also allows users to sketch, collaborate, and make design decisions like never before. Just a quick reminder. To all Zoom attendees, don't worry, your mics and cameras are disabled. If you wish to make a comment, click on chat at the bottom left. Tell us where you are from and how do you find the topic. If you want to ask a question, click on Q&A at the bottom right, then tell us which speaker to address your question. If you are tuning in via Facebook, please post your queries in the comment section and we'll try to get to you. Audience questions will be asked at the end of the session. Now for our first speaker. Robert, you could start your presentation.
Thanks, Robert. So I've just shared my screen now. Let me know if it comes through okay. All right. Well, look, thank you very much. It's really good to be here. So I suppose just so I could test that it's all working okay, if you can just type in the chat box, if you can see a photo of me, then we should be good to go. How's that looking?
Looks good.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thanks so much. All right. So basically, you know, Archistar's been around now for 10 years. And we've had a really successful time to date. We've been for the last 2 years building our own software. For the first 8 years before that, we were an education and consulting company. And we're really proud that, you know, in the last 2 years, we've been able to sign up a lot of the world's top organizations in terms of the property, real estate, and developer and agent space as well. So we've got a great client list, and I'd love to run you through kind of how the business started and what we've got now and where the business is going as well. So essentially, our business was founded by my brother, Dr. Ben Curry. He's an architect, a parametric designer, and all-around tech guru. So he's a very unique skill set. And essentially, Ben's a registered architect. He's got a master's. He has a PhD. He does lecturing at a lot of global universities and also a consultant to a lot of big global firms. If you look at where our business started, it started off as Archistar Academy, which a lot of architecture firms and universities globally use. We've now got over 47,000 users in the platform. We've done over 1 million lessons and 35,000 exams. So we really started the business to essentially upskill the whole industry in terms of digital design And that was the first 8 years of our business was running this part of the business. And then we ran an event a couple of years ago predicting the future of design. We called it Digital Design 2020. And essentially what we were looking to do there was to kind of launch our new online platform where we developed a whole lot of software ourselves for the first time and bring it to market. So essentially our software is generative design software that's in the cloud and easy for anybody to use. So you don't need any skills in programming or scripting or anything like that. You can just simply use a web browser and you can choose a block of land that you want to develop on. And our system will generate building designs that are compliant with local government regulations. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail, but that's kind of where we started. So we started as a generative design system. And what happened was that we found that when we started showing people this generative design system, people said, look, it's really good that you're doing generative design. That's one piece of the puzzle, but there's actually a few other pieces of the puzzle that are really important as well. And we'd like just having generative design on its own island doesn't really help us. We need you to integrate with other data sets and with other processes so it becomes more valuable to our business. So what we found is that the entire ecosystem of property really comes down, like generative design can impact all those different target markets, which we didn't expect to start with. We thought that we would only be building tools for architects to use, but it turns out that a whole stack of different other markets were very interested in what we were doing. And if you take a look at this slide from Autodesk, it just shows how much building is actually going on every single day. So you've got like 13,000 buildings being built every day globally, which is huge. And it's going to be that every day predicted for the next 30 years. So it's incredible how much building actually happens on a day-to-day basis across the world. And most of it is the old school way. They just do things the same way they were doing it 20, 30 years ago. And then if you take a look at where the breakup of that is, like almost 25% of that is in China. And a lot of that's in Africa as well. So it's super interesting to see where all this building's happening. And we've done really well in our first market in Australia, but it's so interesting to see what's happening globally and how much opportunity is there. So we really like this kind of diagram as showing you the design life cycle. So firstly, you start at that pre-design or concept stage, then you move to the design and development application stage, then you'll go through to design development, and then you'll go into that tender and construction stage. And so what Archistar is essentially about is shifting the curve from this traditional process where a little bit of work done up front, but most of it's done in this middle construction documentation stage, to a lot earlier. So shifting the curve backwards so that a lot more work is done in this pre-design and schematic design stage. And the reason is because the earlier that you do this heavy lifting, the less expensive it is to make changes and the easier it is to make changes. So that's why we're all about putting the tools in the hands of these early designers so that people can make designs a lot earlier, a lot more compliant, and get a much faster process and a lot less expensive process. So we do this using 4 different pieces of technology. We help developers and architects and real estate agents. We help them in 4 different ways. We help them find and assess development sites. We help them generate building designs. We help them analyze those sites for feasibility. And then we help them achieve compliance with government regulations. So this is Archistar, the new platform, and I'll show you exactly how we've built it. So what we've done, remember at the start how I spoke about how we've intersected a whole number of different industries. We've actually got a very large data team. So we've got 19 people in our data team, and they've spent time just in Australia mapping 266 million local planning rules into the platform. So we now have a very large database of every single planning rule you could think of in Australia, and we're also working on expanding this internationally as we speak. So essentially we capture a whole lot of planning rules. A lot of these come from PDF documents that are hundreds, if not thousands of pages long. And we've put that into a nice, consistent national database, which has been a very big effort from our team's behalf. So now we have 95% of the population mapped on the platform, and we're getting very close to moving that to 100%. So we're very, very close there as well to getting full national coverage in Australia. And as we mentioned, we also are moving internationally very quickly as well. So the way that it works is you can click on any particular property around the country, and you get all this information that comes up on the left-hand side. So you can see, what's the building height, what's the floor area ratio, and a whole lot more information about that site as well. What's permitted, what's not permitted as well on that site. The next part is that we go and find off-market sites. So you can put in your criteria about what you're looking for in a development site, and our system will highlight in red all the sites that match your criteria, which is really powerful. The next thing that we do is an instant estimate. So on any block of land that you choose, we give you a very quick estimate as to how much sales you will make on there, how much profit you will make, and also how much you should pay for that land, the residual land value, to achieve your desired profit margin. So that's all one click out of the platform straight away. We also do visualizations. So on here, you're seeing some zoning visualization. So you can see that, on a national basis, we have all the zoning layered in. So you can see a beautiful color-coded zoning scheme that's very standardized. We also have heritage areas. So if there's an existing heritage building on a site, we show you that. We also show you flood zones. So you can see here if there's any flood impacted zones. In Australia, there's a lot of bushfire zones, so you have to be careful when you build in those zones, and we highlight them as well. We also show contours. So this is essentially very important because you can see the slope of the land. And then we also show the 3D contextual buildings. We show how the buildings intersect into what's there at the moment. So in Australia, we have some very powerful data partners who we work with. So we show all the different properties that are on the market currently, and we show what's for sale and what's for rent as dots on the map, plus also aggregated data sets. And then we give you very detailed integrations into what that property looks like as well at the moment. We also show this for houses, apartment, and for commercial property as well. So if it's an office, if it's a warehouse, if it's an industrial estate, we show that as well. We've also got here development applications. So if there's an existing site, but a developer has already put a development application in, or they're in construction, we show you the status of where that's up to as well. And then we have a powerful add-on here with aerial imagery. So you get to see the latest aerial image, which is updated every quarter. So the really interesting part is the generative design. And so essentially this is showing when you click a land, we generate hundreds of designs in seconds that match the criteria of the local government rules. And this is all shown here in real time. So you can see here, there's a whole lot of different rules that are provided, and there's lots of different sites as well. So this is showing some subdivisions. This is showing some high-rise buildings. And we do have an export into CAD as well. So if you're using AutoCAD or Revit as BIM or Rhino, we can export into 2D or 3D models as well. So you can take a design from Archistar and then play with it in your preferred design tool of choice. We also do a lot of analytics. So what we do straight away is also develop something into a unit mix. And then so basically we turn the unit mix on. And then so you can see here the breakup between 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom apartments. And what we also do is a solar analysis. So we show you how much sunlight hits each of the apartments and how many hours of sunlight that each apartment gets. We do the same thing for other environmental factors like cross ventilation. So you can see here that all these ones that are in blue get fresh air all the way through the apartment, which is important in the Australian market. And all ones that are in grey are not ventilated, so they don't get fresh air all the way through the apartment. The next thing that we have is what we call a feasibility. So essentially on any of these designs that come up, you can get an instant feasibility to work out how much sales and costs and profit you would make on any one of those sites in real time as well. So we've got commercial buildings here. So we showed you some residential before. This is commercial. We also do hotels and we do mixed use. Over here, you're seeing some shadows. So basically you're seeing what the shadow analysis is. Again, this is all in real time from the system. And then building separation. So in Australia, there's rules about how close you can build to other buildings. So any apartments that are in red are actually in breach. So they're too close to the next building. So this wouldn't get approved. And then there's also car park design as well. So this is a really good overview of the system. I'll do a very short case study about finding a site here in Australia. So what we do first is we turn on the zoning overlays to see which sites are allowed for high density. And then we click on the townhouses tab. So we're trying to build a low density one or a medium density in this particular area. We then check if that particular site is developed. So we can see here using the aerial imagery that this one's not developed. So this is a good opportunity. And you can see their two neighbors on either side are fully developed. So there's a great opportunity to build here. So as we click on this site, now we review the planning rules. So we can see what the planning regulations are for the particular site. And we get into much more detail about what overlays and references are on the site as well. We then check comparable sales, so we can see that a neighbouring property is selling for $340,000. And we can also see there's a development application, and we can see how many units they're fitting into that particular land, so we know what the average unit size will be. So the great thing is now we know that about 200 square metres seems to be about the average lot size. They're quite small lots in a particular area. And then we can test out some designs. So we've got a design here. This is the Winnie design where it's a road down the middle and then there's properties on either side there. Now we can run a feasibility to see how much profit we would make on this particular site. So we can see we have a residual land value here of $1.45 million. So to get a 20% margin, we could pay $1.45 million for this block of land and make it still profitable. We can then review the zoning to make sure that that's all fine, and yep, and we're good to go. So yeah, I could go into a lot more detail, but I know that we have a lot of presentations to get through today, and there's also some time for question and answer. So thanks so much, and I look forward to hearing any questions that come through.
Thanks, Robert, for the presentation. I really liked it. Especially, there were a few points that you made, like where you had many of the Australia planning rules codified into your system already, so that when you generate some design options, all of them will comply. So did you have any difficulties or any challenges to try to comb through these regulations and then try to computerize them in order for your program to understand it?
Yeah, it was a very big challenge. So we had to rebuild our database 4 times. So we built it once and we thought we solved it, and then we had to rebuild it again because the structure wasn't right. So we had to do that 4 times because in Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same in Singapore, but they're very complex in Australia, the planning regulations. So they might say, this is the building height and these are the setbacks that you need to hit.
Yes.
Then if you are on if you're facing this side of the road, then the setbacks change. And then the setback is, for the first 4 levels that you got a certain setback, then for the next 4 levels, the setback goes lower,
Exactly.
then it goes like, yeah. So it's a very complex database structure that we had to build to be able to handle that.
I see, yeah. So in Singapore, we also have things like if you're near the public roads, you have to offset a certain distance. But if you are at a common boundary next to your neighbor, then you have to follow another set of tables. So
very similar, yeah.
It's the same, right?
Yeah.
So in Singapore, what we're trying to do is similar to yours, but instead of coming up with a design, we are trying to come up with a program that can check whether a proposed design has compliance or not. But I think the fundamentals of obeying the regulations are the same between yours and ours, right? So we also have some really deterministic guidelines, like if it's a road of this category 4, then the offset must be 15 meters. But then there are certain urban design elements that are quite subjective, and it's really challenging to computerize and codify them into a table, So
yeah.
That's what we are facing now. Do you have any advice for us, or do you think that maybe it's something that should be taken into the next step of evaluation and should not be included in the conceptual stage for now?
Yeah, so we're all about human plus AI. So we never think that AI is going to completely remove any human elements. It's all about assisting in that process. So what we find is that a lot of architects and designers like to use our system at that very early concept stage. So they can put together, let's call it 5 or 10 designs that they like, and very, very quickly. And then what they'll do is pick 1 or 2 of those designs that they really like, and then export that into Revit or Rhino, and then take it from there. So, but they'll know that yeah, it's pretty close to being feasible.
I see.
And all of the quantitative measures are kind of catered for, but then there's qualitative measures. So in Australia, there's things like, you need to fit in with the neighborhood context.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
all of those things would be impossible for a computer to do. So you need a local person to support it. So we're all about trying to support the local architects and make their job a bit easier, and remove a lot of the grunt work and the low value work, so they can focus on the really important work.
I'm just curious, in terms of how long does it take to build up that data set to be entered? Because in the context of Singapore, it is quite complex, but I think it's likewise similar to that of Australia. So in another layer there, aside from the urban planning and urban design aspect, is you're feeding some real estate data. So
yeah,
that's also something that's quite comprehensive here, because a lot of property is already quantified here, and basically costing as well. So in principle, how long would it take if we are to adopt such a thing here?
Yeah, so our team, it's taken us about 2 years to get to where we are now, and it's taken we estimate about 100,000 person hours to collate all the zoning planning rules for the Australian market. In saying that, we've made, because we're doing it for the first time and we had to rebuild the database 4 times, it was, we got a lot of learnings. So we would expect that to be significantly shorter the second time that we did it in an international market. So we've done some testing in the US and the UK, and we would significantly shorten that time, because I think with anything that you do in life, like, you make a lot of mistakes the first time you do something, then you get more experience and you learn from that. And so we've made all those mistakes, which is good. So yeah, we could share some of those learnings. Yeah.
You have already a data structure that you can depend on, like a framework. So you just build onto the proven framework, right?
That's the thing, yeah, because like you said, like, the rules are so complex that the database needs to be flexible enough that it can handle all those edge cases, because you think that you've solved it, and then there's someone who comes up with this new rule that you've never seen before, and the previous structure can't handle it. So it's really important to get that framework right at the start, so that it can be flexible enough to handle all the complexities that come through.
Okay, thanks. One more question, if there's time. So I noticed that your platform aggregates all the data so that it can churn and produce things like profitability and cost, right? But in Singapore, I feel that some of the platforms are quite segregated. So we in the private developer network, we have a few platforms, and then on the government side of things, we also have a platform that we rely on. But these two don't really start to talk to each other. So to have a product like yours may not be feasible now. So do you have any recommendations on how we can start to aggregate these two data together?
Yeah, so it's about having a common platform, and basically an agreed standards between the public and the private sector.
Yeah.
And so again, it's taken us 2 years to get the public and private sector to start talking to each other.
Okay.
Again, the solution's quite simple and quite elegant, but it's more the politics and and getting the people together. So I think it's not really the technical challenge isn't there. The technical challenge can be easily solved. It's more about just having the right stakeholders in the room, and all talking to each other so that it can be effective.
I see. So I guess there must be a mutual trust between the private and public sector.
Yeah, totally. And then it takes a bit of work, because, like in Australia, the public sector is very slow. So, the private sector really wants things to speed up, and the public sector, they still do want things to speed up, but they just have more processes and more bureaucracy to get through. So it's so the main effort is getting the public sector on board. That's the hard part, because I think the private sector would do anything to make things faster. So they're always really keen to make it faster, and it's the public sector that's the most important to get on board.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Thank you for your very honest feedback and advice. So now for our second speaker, a long-time buddy of mine, Johan. We've met way back in Portugal, and one of the first few RTC's Revit Tech Conference. So Johan, please.
Yes, been a while since we met. So yeah, thank you everyone for inviting me today. I'm going to be talking a bit about Archeo, and we're going to try something new for that. Like, I want to talk about Archeo well-being in Archeo. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to be seeing not only my Zoom meeting, but the actual Archeo software. And so I'm going to put on a VR headset, and that little red guy you see over there, that's my VR avatar. So I think everyone can see me, right? So Archeo is a collaborative, briefly mentioned, a collaborative AR, VR, but also like a flat screen design tool. And I'm going to position myself to the second slide so we can talk about these things. I'm going to move myself in. So currently we are in Singapore. I loaded a Revit model in the Singapore context, and we'll later just jump outside and talk a bit about that. With me today is Arthur from the committee today, and we're going to show this together. Now, everyone is, I think, familiar with the architectural process of sketching, making foam models, and communicating design ideas together. We often do that in 2D with 3D objects, but we most of the day now work on flat screens to look at our 3D designs. Now, we have, with AR and VR, we have technologies to look at these designs in actual 3D, so we can perceive those skills and see those changes live. But once we want to do a change, we can move back to, we have to move back to our flat screen to see our changes and export everything back to a 3D environment for VR. Now, with Archeo, we want to do things a bit different. And I'm going to ask Arthur, like, not to maybe block too much, otherwise people cannot see the slides too much. Like with Archeo, we want to make some, the design process itself almost feel like physical model making, where you can pick up objects and where you can slide them along and they will align and stretch and glue to other objects, like they would be physical 3D objects. And we do this in a way that we are familiar with in architecture. We're using tracing paper to print floor plans. We put a new layer on top and we sketch ideas on top. In Archeo, we want to do that with a 3D matter. So we are able to load in a Revit model or a Rhino model or a SketchUp model. And in Archeo, you can make new suggestions or sketches on top of this. So I'm just, as a little try out here, adding a little sketch to that design. I'll later just show you live in the context that we're working in today. And let's move to the next few slides. So with Archeo, we wanna give everyone the like the power to experience and adjust the design on any scale. So I'm able to stretch objects as using my hands, like really picking the vertices of the objects, but I can also edit objects from a distance, just picking them up. And later I will show you can actually pick up entire buildings in the scene like that. And best of all is we can do all of this together. So now Arthur is with me in this space, but we can do this with up to 10 people at the same time. We can edit this scene on different scales, and we can also invite people to view what we're doing live. Now, the nice thing of Archeo is it works on any device. Not everyone, everyone has access to the VR hardware. Like maybe some of you have heard about the Oculus Quest, which is a new portable VR headset. Archeo runs on that device, but it also runs on iPads, and we're also planning to support the upcoming AR devices that are nearing. Now, the best actually is to just show all of this live, but maybe good to explain a bit. Like we built a modeling engine from scratch here, and almost three and a half years of development went into this. It's a volumetric modeling engine So you can compare it a bit to tools like Revit that are also volumetric, but we added this physical layer on top. So you can pick up, slide, and move things around and glue things around. But they're basically a database, like a bin database, and it works very good with Revit, what I will show later. Now, I'm going to change my camera to make you guys see what I'm seeing. And hello, there's Arthur, and we are currently in that that Reddit building that we loaded. I'm going to just teleport outside of this building. So right now, I'm just making myself really big, 1000 scale, and we're able to just look around that model as being a physical model. And in that model, we can load all these 3D buildings that we see here as context, but we can also interact with the objects that we made in ArcGeo. So this thing I actually already made last time, but I'm just going to throw it away, and we're going to build something new here. Now, when I'm building with geometry, it's a very simple process. We're adding objects using a interface that we made for working with VR and AR, and just selecting the actual shape that will make you select it. And I'm going to use a split mode, which when I'm creating shapes will automatically split into floor levels. So I'm just going to make a base like I'm doing here, pick up the bottom stack like I'm doing here. Maybe I want to get rid of these top layers, I don't need them. And I can add new stacks on top of here, and I can even carve into these objects, and that will make a live Boolean operation. So using my hands, I can just fine-tune the shape itself. I can pick up and slide objects, but I can also stretch, and I think Arthur is now in the same time modeling something there, so that's great. You can show that it's a collaborative environment. So I can stretch these objects, and you see how everything parametrically connects to it and stretches with it. And when rotating my controller, I can even like stretch some parts of that model not. Now, all of this geometry is parametric. So when I'm adding, for example, program information, so maybe I want to add, let me quickly, because I'm seeing my camera is not 100% smooth, it's not too comfortable to watch. But when I'm in the program mode, let me just show you there, I can add, for example, some residential program to these volumes. And you see now on the top of the building, some totals are appearing. I can add some commercial area, and there's 3 floors there, and maybe add some office space in between here. And the best thing of all this is when I'm editing my shape, you see that the sizes are all changing in real time. And this data, what I'm seeing here, can be imported or exported to a CSV file. So you can also load in your own 3D program of maybe you have some site plan already that needs to be fit in, and you can also export it again to work with the data and other tools. Now, when I'm working on different scales, I'm able to just stretch like I just did before, just moving around the different objects. But I can also just jump on the street level. Let me actually, just before I do that, add some scale elements. Like I'm just going to add a tree here and a tree here and one here. So when I jump to that street level and one-to-one scale, I'm able to really see like the scale property of this area of the Marina Bay Sand area. There's some floating geometry we have over there. But on this level, I'm still able to make adjustments. So maybe I want to make those like first 2 levels. I don't want to make them 3 meters high. I want to make them 6 meters high. And you see when I'm doing that, it stretches the tower top geometry with it. So everything is connected and parametrically aligned. And it works a bit like the the massing tool in Revit and Format, but we try to make things a bit more like physical model making. Now, briefly checking the time, that we're on time. So Arthur is creating something really nice here, the forest I see, and using the tools that we have. Let me just show you some of the tools. I can make, for example, a suggestion on what Arthur is doing by making a sketch. And I can also do that on that Revit model that we loaded. So like right here, I added those slides for the start of the scene, but I can also add little notes on that model. Maybe I want to make the double height opening bigger here, or maybe I'm considering having the tower like a slightly wider. I can just add like a cube. Whoop. Here we go. Add like a cube that is without levels. And adding these suggestions on top of the model can happen in both the normal way of working in Archeo, which is the VR way, but we can also do that in 2D using conventional devices. So what I did here is all in 3D, but I'm now going to just show you how I can log into that same session that we're actually working in from an iPad. So let me just make sure that iPad is running correctly. So we're now reconnecting to the scene. So currently I see on the iPad, on the iPad I see the two VR users in that scene, and I'm able to make a suggestion.
Yes,
Here.
currently on an iPad, yeah.
No trickery. And like on here, I have the same tool sets or user interface, so I'm able to just zoom in, for example, on that Revit building. I can pan around a bit to see what we are creating, and maybe make a note on the side of that building. Like on the iPad, the sketching, it works really good because you're using your hand, right? And you can even use an Apple Pencil to get more exact sketches. I don't know if anyone ever used the iPad for architecture.
So you're saying there's added functionality using a tablet. Okay.
It has, like, especially if you want to do like the kind of conventional 2D edits, like sketching, the iPad, of course, a bit more precise. When you're working with VR, it's very good for these rough massing studies and shaping of designs, because it's very close to that model making. But when doing the 2D things like sketching, the iPad actually has. And another advantage that the iPad version has, show you that the data is also live here, and I can make, for example, an edit, so I can pick up that volume that Arthur just made, and I can slide it around somewhere else. So the iPad has like the same editing functionality on that same environment, but the added benefit of an iPad is that they also have like an AR mode in it, so we can put that model on a table in AR, and we're able to just, I can show you going out of the camera, but I'm able to just pan around and see, I see the texture of the Marina Bay is not 100% aligned, but the models are. And the best of all is, let me just put this headset down. It's like, this is something that's still experimental, and I haven't actually talked about that yet, but it's maybe good to say. Archeo is still a tool which is in development and which is currently in beta. So everything that I'm showing here, these are like the recent developments of how the software is progressing. And we're looking for people that want to beta test this with us. So the features I'm showing here, for example, like modeling an object in AR on that table, and maybe making a suggestion on that model with a sketch in AR. like these are all features that have yet to be tested, but they're like enabling a workflow that typically was not possible in architecture. You had to go back to your PC, then export to software to render in VR, then you had to use a different software to use it in AR, then you had to use a different software again to use it on a tablet. Like with Archie, we want to connect all of these devices and you just log in and make edits on that same 3D space. And when you're okay with the results, or you have explored the different scenes together, you can export those results back to the original CAD application. Now, to talk a bit about that, I'll just put that tablet down here and just go back to normal mode. Oops, the pencil gets stuck there. The different features in the app are built around collaboration and doing design explorations and studies. So the scene that we made here now, I'm able to change or make a new duplicate of that scene where I make new suggestions. So maybe in this one, I don't want to move that tower here. I just want to move it here, and maybe I just move that one over here. And just being in that space and making several options together, I'm able to maybe just teleport here down to the street and look like this. I'm able to switch between all of these options with all of my participants in the same meeting, and we can literally make decisions on the spot of where to go next. Because that process in architecture, that's often where it stalls, where we need to make design options for clients. Then we need to go back to our drawing equipment. We need to work on it for 2 weeks. Well, in the end, a lot of the work and problems could have been solved on that spot with the clients or with like design consultants about trying to connect the dot or like some complex design issue that you're trying to solve. And having those options inside of the app also gives you that extra bit of work that's very common in architecture. Then let me see, there's like a lot of things I can actually talk about in the app, but I don't want to make it too much like a one-directional story. Like if there would be any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them. In the meantime, I don't know if there were any questions.
Johan, maybe I can ask you a question.
Yeah.
So when I got to know you many years ago, you were starting to develop this app. So
Yeah.
what drove you to start to develop this app? There must be a reason or experience you had in school.
Frustration, actually. Yeah, because the thing with the design process in Revit is like they're very contradictory in how
and technical, right?
How
and you need to know many
work
buttons. You need to know where the buttons are.
Like
So in a
Revit
way,
is
you're trying to liberate the design to laymen, to developers, not just very technical modelers or architects.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's a very decent and very great effort from you. The other question I have is, so you mentioned that after you have modeled the geometry, you are able to export it into various formats. So what are the available formats that you can export it in?
Let me actually show that like this one that we just made, because the available formats that we have now, it's so I'm just going to open that like option drawer that I have here, and I'm going to export. So we now have the option of OBJ format, which pretty much all 3D tools, they support OBJ, and the Revit. And Revit, we really closely integrate with. And because Archeo is very similar in the modeling, let's say the mass format of the shapes and the editing itself, it's a very good integration we can make. And here we see Revit, where we have our plugin. We can just import that scene that we just exported. And this is actually, like once we got it into Revit, also allowing you to make those DWG exports, like using the set files, and like you have like a lot of like once it's in Revit, you can connect it to Speckle. You can the possibilities are endless in a way. And
so
this
would the geometry still remain editable when it's in OBJ or in Revit
depending
format?
on what geometry. So like over here, let me just show you. So we have you can choose if you want a generic model or a mesh. So like
Yes.
for example, those towers that I made, like they probably make more sense to have as a mesh in the Revit.
Yes.
So we'll just do that. And the generic models have the advantage of like being in like the individual sliced stacks of the floors. So they both have their usage. Once the geometry is a mesh, it's basically a bit like the dynamo meshes. They are a direct shape. So the next time you need to get that information back in from RKO, it will update that direct shape. So it's basically the same as working with Dynamo or Formit or any of these other tools that just push the data in in Revit. But it's still native geometry, so you can use those meshes to populate the facades with adaptive.
Oh, that is really awesome, because that means the geometry of the object is not dead. It can still remain editable and to be developed by the architects that take over the project downstream.
And it's also like you can keep doing these round trips. So if you're like if you have something and you loaded it into Revit and you just want to make another suggestion with a client, or like another design team comes in, you can keep doing these round trips, and it will just it just gets rid of the old RKO geometry, and you can get like the new families and geometry.
You could bring the model back into RKO for the developers to continue to collaborate with the architects to edit the model, correct?
Yeah.
I would just like to add, maybe it's not just like collaboration with the client, but also with the authorities. Like for myself,
correct. Yeah.
URA, it's good as well to have different points of view in a more immersive environment, like from the street level, looking at certain massing, and also if it's a tower from a neighboring tower height. On specific controlled sites where certain things are particular, it's actually a quite good environment for collaboration. Perhaps for the clients, it's for them to understand the massing and basically the form of the building, but in terms of a lot of changes that would affect the urban design environment, it would be mostly with the authorities. But it's quite interesting. So when you were saying that when you were pulling up some levels, you have set floor to floors for specific buildings, yeah?
Yeah, so these slices that you saw appearing when I pulled the shape out of thin air, those are by default set to 3 meters, but you can define them like specific. And the height adjustment that I did when I was stretching things, they allow you to just like make fine adjustments on like some levels they need to be higher, for example. So like in RKO, let's just show you here. So that these levels you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like they get, like when I'm creating a shape like this, they get made automatically, but they are still parametric. So you can use that to make like little Rem Koolhaas buildings if you want to do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But you can also just use them like, oh, I made too many floors, I just throw those away.
You remind me of this building in Singapore called the Interlace.
Yes, it's a former OMA architect also, right? Like they like that kind of style with the stuff.
All came from Rem's office anyway, so it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you see, this is that mass that got generated. So you can just like it's a mass family, so you can assign mass floors to it, and work with that. And even the sketches, like if you draw some notes and some sketches, they all just flow into Revit, and you can build your floor or road or whatever was the design.
That's really good, because sometimes in the model we have to indicate a pedestrian connectivity and and cyclist connectivity. So by drawing it easily in RKO and bringing it into Revit, we can easily tell the developer or the architect where the intended routes that are supposed to be in this building.
And I think this is what like these kind of workflows they typically have not been possible, because once you get to a VR, you're often at an end station. You are looking at it, but like once you have a suggestion or something, you have to go do all sorts of stuff to get it back into the VR environment.
True.
Okay, at this point of the session, we could go into a panel discussion.
Hi, Robert. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Should I stop sharing my screen? I think, yeah.
Let me just set up my screen as well. Hold on. I'm at... Oddly, I don't see anybody. Everybody disappeared. Wait, am I sharing my screen now?
Not yet, Robert.
Not yet.
Being blocked by the...
That's working now.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay, so so right now for the Q&A, we have a couple of questions. A few for Robert. So how often would you regularly update the database? So with this software, is it on a subscription basis, and therefore you'll be updating the software?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so it's really important.
Database, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, no, so it's really important that the data is very accurate, because developers and architects and real estate agents who use this platform, and even government, that they rely on this information. So if we've got outdated information in the database, then the product isn't very helpful for people. So it's important that it is up to date. So we update weekly.
Okay, okay, weekly. Oh, well,
yeah, which is really fast. We'd like to do daily, but we're getting there, but it's weekly at this stage, which is still, the government rules don't change that fast. So weekly is normally more than sufficient for our business.
I would think weekly update applies to the private market where the prices change very frequently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and even for government rules, we do weekly as well. So for the listings, like the sales data and the rental data and that data, that's updated daily. So that's a lot faster. But for the government planning regulations, it's updated weekly.
Oh, they have a weekly update. I was thinking, is it a lot, basically the major cities in Australia that you have all the information, or is it like?
We've got complete national coverage. So even the rural areas and the country areas, we include that as well. So we have metro cities and the rural areas. So it's all the areas.
Okay, so it means that's why it's weekly, is because you're controlling a national scale of inputs.
Yeah, and somewhere around so for example, like the city of Sydney, they haven't updated their rules in 8 years. So it's been the same for 8 years, even though we do check on a weekly basis, but there's been no changes for 8 years. But if you look on a national basis, like there are, like somewhere around the country, there's lots of changes happening at any one week. So that's why it's important to keep that national weekly update happening, because yeah, that's what happens.
Okay, and the next question for you, as BIM is largely a platform for collaboration between different areas in construction industry, what do you envision your application to be? Oh, sorry, another question jumped in. So actually yours is, yeah, it actually answered a lot of Australian cities. So now if this one's for Johan, as BIM is largely a platform for collaboration, wait, it's moving again, sorry. Okay, as BIM is largely a platform for collaboration between the different areas in construction industry, what do you envision your application to be used for in 10 years? How would you implement the AR side of your application to facilitate construction phase of the projects?
So like 10 years, well, we can dream, of course. I think a lot of the complexities in the tools that we have today, they can be solved by like a platform like Arkio, where like thinking really in 10 years from now, when you could load in all these CAD formats, BIM formats, and just align them to your physical construction site, you can make those nodes on the construction site itself. You can make new like mass studies in different skills, and the communication in architecture has been typically done with flat drawings and documents, and I think that will not go away, but having a way to also do that communication in actual 3D with the actual scale of those objects, that there's such a big potential there. So I really hope that like it could benefit all of the different silos of the construction industry, architecture industry, and we can go like all the different fields. I think have something to benefit from it.
Okay, this one, between the two of you, each of you could answer. So from the time that you launched your software, how long did it take before the market could pick up onto it? Let's start with you, Johan, first, because you mentioned that you're still in beta stage.
Yeah, we're still in beta. So the adoption has been, it's pretty good. Like it's like globally we have interest, people are trying it out and giving us feedback. Like it's still a new technology, and with any new technology, it always comes with like the early adapters and again that adaptation curve. But we noticed, like especially since last year, we started to have the iPad version, like the Android cell phone versions, like the mobile apps. They got a lot more, let's say, interest from especially how to say this nicely, less tech savvy, but adventurous people that also wanted to join in. So that's enabling more conventional devices like PCs, tablets. It really helps to make this a bit more spread out. And that's going to be like we're planning to like go live with this software in early access towards the end of this year, and that platform is going to be like a important one for us as well to get that adaptation speed up a bit faster. Because if we have to rely purely on VR and AR, those technologies are still seen a bit as a gimmick for most people, and we need that also to pick up from other people in the collaboration as well.
For you, Robert, so you launched some time ago, I believe.
Yeah, so we launched a bit over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It took us 3 months from the time that we first showed some screenshots of the platform to get it developed to version 1 and to have some paying customers. So we were very fortunate that our original customers were very supportive, because if I look back at version 1, I'm pretty embarrassed about that product now, but we still had paying customers at the time, which was fantastic. And yeah, so I think it's really important to have those people who, at that early stage, believe in your vision, even if the product isn't quite where you want it yet, just to have that vision and that roadmap of where you're taking it, and to keep them informed about, you know, yes, look, I know that you want these extra 5 features, and like, here's our roadmap, here's when we're going to be delivering each of those 5 features that you're looking for. So that kind of, that kind of helps, you know, even if your first product isn't as good as you'd like it to be, you kind of, you buy yourself a bit of time by sharing the roadmap and keeping people informed.
Yeah, I think early adopters would be good because it's your primary input from what the market might need to suggest stuff.
Yeah, and it's important that they pay as well. So like, everyone will try it for free.
Yeah.
So, you know, everyone loves a free trial. So it's really easy to get people to test things for free, but you know that you've got some traction when, you know, you do charge, even if it's a little bit, you don't have to charge the full amount that you would normally charge, but at least, yeah, there's some sort of exchange of value there. That, yeah, that's kind of when you know you're getting some traction.
Yeah, I think compensation would, because otherwise if it's free, it's taken for granted. So yeah, it's good that, you know, there is value to that. Okay. Adriel, do you have a question?
Not a question, but I do see synergies between both Robert's and Johan's product, because Robert helps to derive a design based on regulatory constraints, right? And the end result is a meshing that sort of complies. But to add your own personal design element, then you would need Johan's Archeo to start to sort of like massage or tweak the edges and the vertexes. But in the end, you still need to arrive to the same constraint to maximize profitability. So I think both of your products do work really well together, and perhaps you all can explore a possible collaboration.
Maybe.
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, like it's really impressive, you know, what Johan and the team have built in such a short amount of time. So we're really excited to see where that goes, for sure.
Yeah, like right
Yeah.
now I'm looking at projects that I'm foreseeing that all of this is quite applicable. Even because I'm doing projects outside of Singapore as well. So there are markets where even if either software, if we just get enough information, would be satisfactory. Okay.
Like an interesting one in there, and this is also something for, I think, all future software developments, like the current situation we're in with yeah, the healthcare situation. It also makes just collaborating a lot more challenging. So like tools like these, they have to be they're kind of forced to be a bit more collaborative, and the more collaborative they are, they will also help to have like better international collaborations and projects. Because like right now, like I was just in that same space as Arthur, and he's on the other side of the world, and we were still able to have that creative session like we would be in person on a modeling table. And like, I think with all generative design solutions, all of these things will slowly get more connected to other software and get hopefully a bit more like easy to use for everyone to join.
Okay, so I hope everybody watching us on Zoom and on Facebook found something new in today's session. I think we're closing this session now. Thank you to our BeyondX speakers and the audience who registered, and also the Facebook viewers right now. Please do check the schedule, which I'm just going to reshare again now. Sorry. Yes, so just check the schedule for other interesting and informative BeyondX sessions. On behalf of myself and my co-moderator, on behalf of my co-moderator, we'll just see you in the next cycle of BeyondX set in July 2021. But do catch the other sessions following tomorrow. So basically tomorrow we have three sessions in construction, process, and design. So with that, we're ending the session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.